That's at play here. Look at the debate that we had over guns not too long ago with background checks, and would that create a federal registry of guns that could somehow be used against gun owners? That's another function of what people would worry about, a bloated, oversized bureaucracy meddling in their affairs. So this IRS scandal and this general attack on government, or the ability of government to work well, really plays into not just these issues, but so many of the things that we've been debating every single day.
It confirmed for people who want to believe in either conspiracies or the worst suspicions that this is what's really going on behind the scenes. And I got to tell you, the White House misread this thing at the beginning of the week. Not that they could have gotten out ahead of it, but before they were forced to play defense, they could have said, nobody's more livid about this than we are. That wasn't what they said. That wasn't the tone here. And immediately they lost a whole news cycle, because we know how these things work. And then Tuesday, it was too late for them to be upset with the Cameron when the two of them were there and what he said about the IRS. And now they're once again playing defense, and they've had a really bad month. But from everything I've seen, I don't think people are going to jail on this story as it relates to the IRS. But I do think that people will lose jobs, deservedly so, I think. And I also think there's going to have to be a lot of crow being eaten. Even though the administration had nothing to do with it, they have to reassure people all over again, that the right-wing conspiracies are just that. They're not real. This story didn't help them at all.
It also feeds into this notion that the administration was somehow either caught off guard or unprepared for this, or didn't know what was happening inside its own tent. You talked about the delayed reaction or the slow reaction that the White House has had to this scandal since it broke on Friday. We may even be seeing a manifestation of that now. I mean, this is an address to the nation that was scheduled for 6 p.m., and we're now 13, 14 minutes past 6 p.m. I would assume that there is either double checking or editing, or trying to figure out exactly what they want to say in this message, and that also lends to this image that is somewhat off guard.
Let me just also, we try and pull the curtain back on the show a little bit. It's never a good idea, if you're supposed to have a live 6 o'clock presser, and every network cuts in on something, when you give 14, 15 minutes to guys like Andrew and me to start talking about why there's a press conference. It's not just filling time. You go into all the reasons why this president's on defense. When you have a presser, you want to get right up at the top of the hour. You want to get your message out first before everybody explains what you're going to say and why you're going to say it. This is not, again, here the brightest moment or the shiniest moment here for this administration. All right, let's just give a reminder, Andrew, what we have for the balance of this hour, assuming the president ever does address the nation here and our audience as it relates to the IRS scandal. We're going to be talking about a big case here that we've been talking about for the better part of 4 years in Westchester County, and that is the housing desegregation lawsuit. It was a huge issue that decided the last county executive race here, and it's played out in the courts and on the editorial pages and in many debates since then. We'll be talking to the man in the middle of it, the county executive, Rob Astorino. We also will be joined in the second half hour by a woman who reached national prominence here during the tailhook scandal, if you remember that. And since then, we have, and you saw a lot of reporting on this last week, mind-numbing numbers in terms of the amount of men and women in uniform here who have been sexually assaulted while serving our nation by other people in the military. And then this obviously came to a head where a person who was in charge of making sure that the protocols to try and make sure that sexual assaults were not only prosecuted the right way but followed, he himself was arrested for assaulting a female member of the military. So, and then the more you get into both the numbers and the scope of the story, it's just unbelievable. We'll be speaking to our guest again in the second half hour. And then major political news here closer to home as well. We'll be covering the latest out of both the mayoral race and other political news in our region. But again, we are waiting. This is, we're going to bring up a live picture. This is the East Room in the White House. The president was supposed to address the nation at the top of the hour at 6 o'clock. We're now about 16 minutes past that. And again, the subject is that the IRS and whether or not, seemingly it's not if, but why, and for how long and under whose directive the IRS, targeted conservative groups. Apparently, and this is what the White House is going to hope, that it is being reported that 2 rogue workers were principally behind the targeting of these groups. These groups, again, Tea Party groups for the most part, that were seeking nonprofit status through the IRS. The administration sure better hope it's restricted to a handful of, in those words, rogue IRS workers, and that it wasn't in any way coordinated, let alone aided or abetted up the food chain, Andrew.
Was anybody in the administrative position within the IRS, did they know about it? And if so, what steps did they take to try to stop that from happening? Did they target groups from the left, or was it solely Tea Party groups and groups from the right? How high up, as you asked before, into the Obama administration does this go? Were there any instances of this happening in any other offices besides the Cincinnati office of the IRS?
And also, Andrew, apparently complaints about this were made, I understand, for the better part of a year here from groups that believe that they were being singled out. Now, everybody always feels persecuted by the IRS. It's our basic constitutional right as Americans to feel that we're being, banged by the IRS. And you just see right there the speech coming out, or at least some of the talking points for the president. We understand he will be out in less than 2 minutes, and we'll have that in its entirety.
As we've mentioned on RFL over the last couple of days talking about this scandal, you're talking about these 501c3s, these PACs and super PACs that are sort of the hidden money of politics, and these are some of the groups that that the IRS was apparently targeting. And we've said on this program before that elections commissioners, the people who normally monitor elections, don't have the job of vetting these kinds of groups. Is there a lack of oversight when it comes to politically oriented or issue-oriented groups? Is that something the president's going to focus on and bring this back to Citizens United and changes in election laws and election monitoring that we've had in recent years?
One of the principal folks, Andrew, as you know, in this, Senator Max Baucus, Democrat from Montana, he met with the acting IRS Commissioner Stephen Miller to be briefed on what happened, and he spoke to the press later, and he said that he frankly didn't get as much information as he would have liked. Miller told him that the principals that were involved in the IRS had been disciplined. We'll learn what that means. But he also said he doesn't believe it is strictly limited to just those 2 rogue folks here, and that he still has more questions than answers about how we got there. He also said that he counseled the IRS commissioner that it would be in his best interest to be totally cooperative. And again, this is his exact quotes here, Senator Baucus. It's often the cover-up that causes more problems than the original malfeasance. And be straight with me and everybody. And the commissioner, commissioner apparently promised the senator that he would. It's always the way, the cover-up's always worse than the crime. But we don't know enough of the facts right now, but it sure doesn't look good, this story, at least at the onset of it. Again, we should be hearing from the president in just about a minute's time here. In fact, there he is.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just finished speaking with Secretary Lew and senior officials at the Treasury Department to discuss the investigation into IRS personnel who improperly screened conservative groups applying for tax-exempt status. And I look forward to taking some questions at tomorrow's press conference, but today I wanted to make sure to get out to all of you some information about what we're doing about this and where we go from here. I've reviewed the Treasury Department Watchdog's report, and the misconduct that it uncovered is inexcusable. It's inexcusable, and Americans are right to be angry about it, and I am angry about it. I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in any agency, but especially in the IRS, given the power that it has and the reach that it has in all of our lives. And as I said earlier, it should not matter what political stripe you're from. The fact of the matter is that the IRS has to operate with absolute integrity. The government generally has to conduct itself in a way that is true to the public trust. That's especially true for the IRS. So here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to hold the responsible parties accountable. Yesterday, I directed Secretary Lew to follow up on the IG audit to see how this happened and who is responsible, and to make sure that we understand all the facts. Today, Secretary Lew took the first step by requesting and accepting the resignation of the acting commissioner of the IRS. because given the controversy surrounding this audit, it's important to institute new leadership that can help restore confidence going forward. Second, we're going to put in place new safeguards to make sure this kind of behavior cannot happen again. And I've directed Secretary Liu to ensure the IRS begins implementing the IG's recommendations right away. Third, we will work with Congress as it performs its oversight role. And our administration has to make sure that we are working hand in hand with Congress to get this thing fixed. Congress, Democrats and Republicans, owe it to the American people to treat that authority with the responsibility it deserves and in a way that doesn't smack of politics or partisan agendas. Because I think one thing that you've seen is across the board, everybody believes what happened as reported in the IG report is an outrage. The good news is it's fixable, and it's in everyone's best interest to work together to fix it. I'll do everything in my power to make sure nothing like this happens again, by holding the responsible parties accountable, by putting in place new checks and new safeguards, and going forward by making sure that the law is applied as it should be, in a fair and impartial way. And we're going to have to make sure that the laws are clear so that we can have confidence that they are enforced in a fair and impartial way, and that there's not too much ambiguity surrounding these laws. So that's what I expect, that's what the American people deserve, and that's what we're going to do. Thank you very much.
All right. No huge shocks there, however. The acting IRS commissioner, and I believe that's who he said, he didn't say by name, but I think we're talking about Stephen Miller. He has accepted his resignation. That's Washington talk for he was fired. He is expected, or was expected, to testify Friday before Congress. I think the hearings will still go on, but Andrew, he said what a lot of people thought. He should have said on Monday, but nonetheless, 2 days later, he's saying that this was not a directed partisan witch hunt from this administration. Congress and the president got to work together. I think I can give a hearty yeah right on that one, but he can try. But nonetheless, he's trying to at least mitigate the damage at this point to say, this is bad, this is really bad, I know it's bad, we're going to do everything we can to change the way it is and not let this be business as usual.
We had heard him say that. He said that with David Cameron on Monday, I believe. The firing of the acting commissioner of the IRS, that's a bit of news out of this speech by the president. And also the agreement, the pledge to work with Congress as they investigate this. He called for no politics or partisan agenda in that. I can already hear conservatives saying, but there was partisan agenda on the IRS's part. How do you,
now you don't want
how do you remove the
right.
partisanship from this when you injected it in the first place? So,
all right. We are going to be talking about this later on in the program, but when we come back, we're going to get to what our lead subject was going to be tonight, and that was the latest coming out of Westchester, the housing desegregation lawsuit, and much more. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.